Hi, I'm Sarah Lacy.
And I'm Paul Carr.
And against my better judgment, I'm trying to do another Skype connection with London, the only country where we have constant problems with Skype connections. Paul, you're from the UK. Why are you guys so horrible with technology?
I honestly have no idea. Everything. I'm in a hotel where there's supposed to be super fast freaking broadband, and I feel like I'm in the third world, except Wi-Fi works.
Yeah, and we've routinely done calls with people who are in offices where apparently they have super fast connections and they can't get on Skype either. I mean,
Yeah.
like, it's gone from a joke to just annoying.
Yeah, this is a technological backwater. I'm sick of this. I'm sick of this country and this town when it comes to technology.
Which gives us a nice segue into our topic today,
Let's talk about this town and this country.
and
And
technology.
this continent and technology.
Well, let's talk about Paris first, because you just got back from LeWeb, along with everyone on the TechCrunch staff, except for Jason Kincaid and I.
I mean, there's not. I always hesitate about talking about LeWeb because I'll get crap from Loic. He'll be like, "Why you treat me asshole again?" But I don't understand increasingly what LeWeb is for.
Well, and yet, so why do you go every year? I went one year. It kind of seemed like the Valley getting on a plane and going to Paris in like the worst weather Paris has, and so I never went back. Like, you complain about it more than me, and you go back every year.
So the reason I go back is because for exactly what you just said. So I come back to London for December because it's my birthday and because I want to see my family for Christmas, and for like 3 days, people who I know in San Francisco come over to Europe, and so it's an hour and a half for me on the Eurostar, and I get to hang out with my
All the
San
people
Francisco
you just spent a year hanging out with.
Yeah, but for an hour and a half on a train, it's kind of feels like one of those decisions where, I might as well go and have dinner with some people I don't see for a while, and I always kid
People you
myself.
haven't seen for like a week, to be.
Well, partly, but also I always kid myself into thinking that this year it's going to be useful. I share one thing with Mike Butcher of TechCrunch Europe, which is I really, really want European startups to be good. But where he and I part company is he thinks they will be, whereas I increasingly don't. And every year I'm just more and more disheartened by how little Europe has to offer and how much we're just like this year's LeWeb was just basically a succession of Silicon Valley people and
How is it different than any other year of LeWeb?
well, it gets like last year. At least we had, the Queen of Jordan was there. That's somebody you don't see in San Francisco. Year before that, Sarkozy and what they've had like Shimon Peres. So they tend to have these sort of statesmen, and they have, last year there was a good big sort of European panel, which was like, Brent Hoberman and people who have actually done stuff in the European startup scene. So they at least pretended to have some European stuff going on. This year. Nah, this year it was just all Silicon Valley people. It was just embarrassing. I almost said this last year, but I didn't quite. And this year I'm going to say it. I'm just not going back next year. I'm just not. I'm done with it. Like I'm done with South by Southwest. It's just I've given it enough chances to prove me wrong, and it's just embarrassing. It's like a sort of tribute band version of Disrupt, or it's a sort of Epcot center version of Silicon Valley. It's just pointless, and that's no. Loic and Geraldine do a good job. The food was great. The Wi-Fi worked. It was brilliantly presented. This sort of the stage setup was better than even we do at Disrupt. But the speakers were boring, or the speakers were people I'd seen before. It was just a sort of try hard wannabe conference, and I don't think that's a problem with LeWeb. I think that's a problem with Europe.
Well, I don't necessarily have the issue with a destination conference where everyone from the Valley goes into a different place and does something. I mean, I love to go to the lobby. I'm going to we're both going to the Next Web in Amsterdam, which I'm excited about. But like, if I'm going to go somewhere with all people that I see all the time in the Valley, I have to be going for the place. And Paris is great, but Paris in December is miserable. It is miserably cold. It's like cold LeWeb in the spring. I'll go. But it's like essentially you're going for the place.
It was even more miserable. No, I agree.
Let's stop beating up on LeWeb.
Okay,
Tell us a little bit about being back in
of
London, because the last year at this time when you went back to London, you did a pretty harsh article just going off on the startup scene in London.
Yes.
And you were getting creepier by the minute, by the way. You need to take a step back from the computer.
I've got to be honest with you. I'm getting creepy by the minute in real life as well. But yeah, I figured by being nearer the screen, it would somehow make the connection work better. I'm not. It's like people who shout into cell phones.
I know you really want to be back in the TechCrunch studio right now, but you are not going to get there by flying into the screen. Okay, we've got to go. We got to wrap this up. I got stuff to do. I got Christmas presents to buy.
Stuff to do. Yeah, I'm 8 hours ahead. I've got sleep to have. So, since I've been back, this year I basically reposted the same post. And since I've been back, a succession of startup types have come up to me to tell me that I'm wrong and tell me that Europe is in fact, the vibrant cutting edge of technology, blah, blah, blah. And I've asked them all the same question, which is, can you name one company that's founded in the last 5 years that is having any impact in the world stage at all? And by that, I mean in terms of revenues or in terms of traction or in terms of innovation or in terms of anything. And apart from Mendeley, which is a service that allows scientists to share research papers without going through the sort of high barrier of entry of peer-reviewed journals. Apart from them, who a few people have mentioned, there is nothing. No one can answer it. There is people say, oh, well, Mind Candy are doing well, and I point out they were launched 6 years ago. People mention Moo, who were launched 6 years ago. People mention Love Film, who are even older. There's nothing. There's nothing good coming out of London, and people think I want to say that. People think I want to be down on London, but I literally wrote the book on the London startup scene, and it depresses me that the companies that I wrote about 3 years ago, 4 years ago, who I thought were nearing the end of their sort of hype life, are still the ones that people are referring to. I mean, that's depressing. That's like if people in Silicon Valley were still talking about Friendster.
What's the problem?
The problem is, and I've been thinking about this a lot, and I think the problem is London isn't playing to its strengths. London is trying to be, because we have this very close relationship with the US. When we make movies, we want them to look like Hollywood movies. When we make other media, we want it to look American.
Not TV. I absolutely disagree with you there.
No, okay, TV is a good example. Is an exception possibly, but certainly when it comes to the web, we look at the Facebooks and the Foursquares and the Twitters, and we want to create our own versions of those. Now, the problem with that is Silicon Valley is designed, and I know Foursquare comes out of New York, but by and large, Silicon Valley is designed to be the place for that to happen. It's where the investment is, it's where the know-how is, it's where the technology is. So anyone in London who has got any hope of making the next Twitter or Facebook or whatever is also probably smart enough to figure out how to get an H-1B or an O visa and get on a plane and go to Silicon Valley. So the people who left behind are like the B-list people for that kind of startup. And so therefore they just don't get made. We end up with Rumble rather than Foursquare. And yet no one is doing what Nick Denton did years ago and thinking, well, what do people in London know? We know media and we know advertising and we know fashion and we know maybe betting and all these other things. Let's build a business that incorporates those things. We're so obsessed with it's like if you're a musician and your ultimate accolade is to be in a tribute band. That's how London feels. It feels like we're so desperate to be Mark Zuckerberg that no one's thinking that we could be, Colin Firth. That was a terrible mixed metaphor, but you know what I mean.
So the flaw with what you just said is you hold up Nick Denton as the example. He's someone who came to America and did it. I mean, Gawker isn't a company out of London. I think one of the things you can't escape is the market size. Israel is amazing at starting companies. Like, they definitely have their own identity as a tech hub. They haven't done consumer internet well either. I mean, it's just a consumer internet problem. China's the only place that has. I mean, it may not be a London problem so much as it is just a problem with a lot of countries, and that Silicon Valley has just built something incredibly unique in terms of an ecosystem. And, China's done the same thing, but no other place in the world has done it. So is it London,
You're right. I think if you're talking about the consumer internet, the fact is, if you want to be in fashion, go to Milan or Paris, or I guess London. If you want to be, I've said this before, if you want to be a consumer internet play in the English-speaking world, you need to be in Silicon Valley, and there's really no excuse for not being. And you can't find a VC. You had Nick Brisbane on Ask a VC. He couldn't tell you a good reason not to. I can't find an entrepreneur who can give you a good reason for being here. The fact is, yeah, move to Silicon Valley. Take Bastian Lemon's advice, or stay here with the losers.
End on a positive note. What did you miss from London that you're getting to do? Whether it's food, whether it's a favorite place to go.
I like casual swearing without people rolling their eyes. I actually I was out for dinner with a few entrepreneurs the other night, and it was incredible how I found myself shocked by how profane their language was. I was like, I've been away too long. So I miss casual swearing. Good for that. Yeah, I don't know. I've been eating a lot of British chocolate. I've missed that, I guess. But quite honestly, this doesn't feel like home anymore. I mean, that's a weird thing to say, but I'm homesick for San Francisco. So, looking forward to getting back.
Would you say you left your heart in San Francisco?
I wouldn't, but...
Would you say you're trying to climb through the computer screen to San Francisco? Good Lord, you're creepy. Okay, we're going to let you go to bed since apparently you cannot stay awake long enough to keep distance from the webcam.
I can't. Oh, and now I think my computer's going to die.
I will not talk to you next week because I refuse to ever do a Skype call with London again.
That makes sense.
I think we should just end it there on you frozen in carbonite. Join us next week on Why Is This News?